Payojidale Vidhavanasi Vedam Vihitavahitra Charitra Makedam Yeshavadrita Mina Sharira Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Om Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kamam Tamatmastam Yenu Pashanti Diraha Tesham Shanti Shashvati Nitaresham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That one, the eternal among non-eternal things, the intelligence of the most intelligent ones, who, though ever one, nevertheless fulfills the desires of the many. The wise ones realize that one is dwelling in their very self. To them belong peace, and to none else. Om peace, peace, peace. Te dhyan yoga nugata apasyan, devatma shakti svagunayar nagudam, yaha karanani nikilani tani, kalatma yuktanya adidishtat yekaha. Practicing the yoga of meditation, the ancient seers perceived the divine being existing in everything, everywhere, who, though ever one, was nevertheless veiled by its modes of name and form in nature, and who had been earlier inconceivable due to the limitations of their own intellects. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavo Vahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvesho Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. On this fine Sunday, we meet to dive into the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, which is the series of classes we're giving these last few months. This series of classes will become good videos for looking back on, so that any one of you who are not visiting us today live stream can always research those classes that you've missed because of the busy schedules of your lives. That's one of the problems of this world today, is there are so many distractions and so many things to do, so many duties. We just have to remember in the midst of it all that, as Swami Vivekananda said, duty is the scorching midday sun which burns the very vitals of humanity. So you can work yourself out, and you just have to make sure that you don't rust out, that you actually burn yourself out in a good way, you might say. Have these karmas neutralized as you work, and use your discrimination in the world in such a way that you remain free of all the karmic effects and overlays. And also, as our chants just stated as we began the class, try and see through this false superimposition, because the ancient rishis of India, they beheld that divine energy and everything, so they knew what they were working for. They knew that work ultimately was futile, that its main purpose was really just to purify the mind. And once the mind was pure, then it could see its true self. We call that Atman. And so that facility is there and noted for work, karma, yoga, and that's the main facility for it. If one becomes more masterful at karma yoga, say like you'll find teachings in the Bhagavad Gita through Sri Krishna, who is a very adept master at karma yoga, then you'll find ways of working in such a way that you don't accumulate residue. That is, as we've often said, a bird flies through the air, leaves no trace, but a slug crawls across a lettuce leaf, leaves a slime behind. So we want to be more like the bird, free, especially free of any after effects or residues that can collect in our mind, because the mind is the bringer of name and form into the gross worlds. That is, all these worlds of name and form, as we've been talking about, have been projected via the Sanskrit word sankalpa or vikalpa. Those are words that mean projection out of some sort of desire to enjoy or to dominate or even to master in a way. The yogi comes more to test himself in the fires of life, but doesn't consider birth, life, and death to be ultimate stations. As birthless, deathless self is his ultimate station. And this is only a sojourn on earth, visiting the body, associating with the body but not identifying with it, as we've often said. So that's been the trend of our classes and also our satsangs recently, because many questions about karma yoga have been coming up. The teachers, the superlative ones particularly, you'll always notice them always tending to lead your mind back toward the Jnana Yoga path, because it is through wisdom that ignorance gets dispelled. And once ignorance is dispelled, your actions are automatically dharmic. That is, they won't bring about these unwanted residues that will kick back on you later. Not later means not just in this lifetime, which is bad enough, but also in future lifetimes if you have to take them. So the teachers are always leading you back toward that wisdom particle, the way that we're expressing it today in this chart that we've been looking at over the last 3 classes. And we've looked at the wisdom particle, the whole left side of it pretty much, and studied it with various class charts that you remember. Last week, for instance, we took the Om, the dissolving power we were talking about, Arupa Mananasha, and we were talking about the teaching of the Word. And the Word, of course, is paramount in Sufism. It's essential to Genesis and the Bible and to Christian teachings. It's extremely important in our own Vedantic or Vedic and the Tantric and Yogic traditions of India, that AUM. And so don't get confused. Sometimes you see it spelled OM, and that's okay. But to really take it into the Triputi, the triple teachings, you should probably spell it AUM and assign those matras. Jnana matra we're talking about, right? So we're talking about particles. Letters, too, are particles of words. And then inside of the letter, there are particles of wisdom. So this is called Varna in India. It means, in Tantra, it means alphabets and the meanings of words. Not just the intellectual meanings, as all of us have been trained to look into, which is maybe the first or even the second stage of the word. But when you get into the actual meaning of the word, the essence of the word, that's something that's a part of, you'll trace it back to your own inner intelligence. And when you awaken that, then that's Jnanagni, that's the fire of wisdom that you're working with. You're not working anymore with just the intellectual wisdom or the attempt to get away from ignorance. It's an attempt to be literate and not be illiterate anymore. You're now working with the fire of wisdom. And there's, for instance, a beautiful song in India that some of us have sung before, if you remember. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Evam Param Brahma, Tasmai verses. That is Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara. Brahma is Lord of creation. That would be the A of Om. And then Vishnu is the U of Om. He's the Lord of sustenance, of holding everything. And then Shiva, the dissolver, as we were talking about in terms of dissolving all form at the end of your life, or at the end of a series of lifetimes, or at the end of a yuga or a Mahayuga, dissolving all form back into pralaya. That's the M of Om. So Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, they know that there are triple teachings that have to do with the deities, and the deities connect to the word, and the word connects to the mantras, A, U, and M, and that all is fraught with significance. And so they meditate on that. They connect the outer to the inner, and the inner to the causal, and then they render all of those into one state, and they meditate on it. And we were talking about that in this term, in this chart last week. We went through Om completely. We even looked at Gaudapada's process of meditating on the pranava. Pranava is another word for Om. Very much like the word prana, which is energy of a very subtle kind that we've talked about. Also part of the intelligent particle. Will have more classes on the prana directly coming up soon. But in this song, the Guru Stotram also says, Aneka Janma Sampraptir Atma Gyanagni Danena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So Atma Gyanagni Danena, Atma, the self, Gyanagni, the fire of wisdom, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, I salute thee as my Guru. So really when we hear somebody like Sri Ramakrishna say the Guru, the mind of is really your true Guru, but first you have to put it with a realized soul. And that's called holy company, a realized soul. And so we want to go in that direction today towards the Guru, because one of the lotuses here on our nice Gyanamatra illustration, now that we've looked at the Om being the waking state, the dreaming state, and the deep sleep state, and we'll look at what's beyond that as we get into the chart. But I told you last week that with all of this wisdom flowing at us from so many different particles inside of us, we should probably look at a very precious part of that called the Guru, or the teacher. So you have opened my inner eye of wisdom. This song goes on to say, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, I pay you my obeisances. So one feels that way about one's personal Guru, that is one's initiatory Guru, Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna's divine consort, and my teacher's teacher used to say that there are many gurus, but the true Guru is your mantra Guru, is the one who gave you your mantra and showed you how to repeat it and told you what it meant. You know, most mother mantras, or most powerful mantras, bijams, begin with that word Om, A-U-M. Om Namah Shivaya, say, for instance, it's not giving away any secrets because it's such a well-used mantra in the world. All people have heard it. So whatever mantra you get, if you're a worshipper of Vishnu or Shiva or our mother or Ganesha or others, there are these mantras, and most of them begin with that primal word, that unstruck sound of Om. And it's unstruck because it strikes something very deep inside of you called recognition. It's called pratyabhigya. Pratyabhigya is, or recognition of what is half the way towards enlightenment already. We connect it very much with memory, smriti, and our causal memory, smriti bedu, that is memory of having samadhi, memory of being in bliss, memory of being one with God, and how that felt. Those are all memories tucked very, very deep within us. And if we called them up in everyday life, we wouldn't be able to function. There's a beautiful song in India, well, many, of course, but one of them goes that it talks about the elephant entering into the hut, see, and shaking it down to its foundation. So the hut means this body, and the elephant means realization or enlightenment, brought about by contemplating the word Om, for instance, or any of its teachings. So when a man contemplates that, his body falls apart. It's not going to keep it together. That can mean two things. It can fall apart in samadhi, and then he can bring it back together. He can come back into his body. If you're, say, an Ishvara Koti, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say, Ishvara Kotis can collect their minds back from samadhi, but if an ordinary man, of course he wouldn't be ordinary anymore, but if an ordinary man goes into samadhi, then most likely he's going to cast off his body like a leaf in a gale. It's gone. He won't come back to it. He doesn't want to because he has recovered that memory, deep memory of being one with Brahman, which is the ultimate state of consciousness. It is the nature of consciousness, indivisibility. You're not the individual, you're the indivisible, as we say. So that that story that I read recently, something I didn't mean to say, but somebody reminded me of it the other day. It said, when you were at class one day, you said a hailstone was falling into the ocean, which is a teaching from the Viveka Chudamani, Shankara. We'll talk a little bit about him today too. So the hailstone falls into the ocean and becomes one. So maybe on the way down, it's looking at the ocean, it gets a little trepidation called fear of death, but when it sees its true nature and it actually dissolves there, then it's all bliss, all ananda, satchidananda. So anyway, the hailstone falls toward the ocean and saying, oh my God, oh my God. And then when it falls in the ocean, it says, I am God, I am God. So that's the realization, the superlative realization called samadhi or nirvana or satori or beatific vision, if you want to borrow a fine saying in Christianity, or fana in Muslim tradition. That state comes upon a human being, man and woman, when they get deep into meditation on their true nature. So Om and these mantras are ways of leading there, and the Guru is the one who comes along and reminds you of that, gives you recognition, pratyabhigya, of the import of that, because it has fallen so far behind the backdrop of your mind. Most people maybe could remember, have powerful insights if they're in danger, or if their back is up against the wall, or if they have some amazing experience happen to them, they're witness to some phenomena, say some terrific phenomena, say like 400,000 people dying in a tidal wave or something. All of a sudden, that strikes you very deeply, at least on the level of phenomena, and that could bring about a deep memory of death, your past deaths. But the most wonderful thing about that is that how do I know that I've had past deaths? Because there's been a witness to witness the past death. So I must be the witness of all my deaths. And I'm also right now the witness of my life, I hope. I hope I'm the detached witness of my life. Detachment is very beautiful. I mean, if you talk about the Guru, then even when we talk about Gaudapada talking about the stages of meditating on Om, and his teachers teach his student, Shankara was said to be this great Advaita Vedantist, this great Jnani, but he wrote songs like this. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Nutamate, Samprapte Sanihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karne. Does that sound like a dry Jnani to you? The words mean, adore the Lord, adore the Lord, adore the Lord, you fool. That begins to sound a little bit more like a Jnani. When the time of death comes, what good will grammatical rules and regulations do you? What good will this outer learning, the schooling and everything, do you at the time of death? When everything is gone. You come in naked and you leave naked, as they say. So he goes on talking about that very powerful Guru Bhakti. See this principle here, Guru Bhakti, devotion to the Guru. As Vivekananda said, one thing you need, devotion to the Guru. Do you have that? Are you doing your Shiva Puja every day? You see how nicely the Shiva Lingam there is decorated on our altar. You see, because last night there was a puja here and we managed to not just say Om Namah Shivaya, but we were offering flowers to the representation of Shiva there in stone. And that was hewn from the foothills and the rocks of the Himalayas we brought back from India. So we have a very beautiful Shiva Lingam there that we worship and make sure that we do it in line with the tradition that our teachers have taught us how to worship it. We were actually talking about that last week, about the man who all of a sudden had a desire to worship Shiva, if you remember, and he had to find a Shaivite guru to teach him. So the guru is very, very important then in our tradition, essential. In fact, they say there are three great sources. The first is Guru Anushasana. You must have a fine guru, a teacher. And then you must have Vidya Shastra. Vidya means wisdom and Shastra means scriptures. You must study the wisdom scriptures. And there we want you to study the non-dual ones more than the secondary ones. The Shruti. Shruti is good, best, and Smriti is second best. Historically, Itihasa is also good. Those are all playing into the Guru Bhakti theme, but what the Guru really wants for you is to be free, is to get enlightenment in this lifetime and be free in all future lifetimes, if you should decide to take any, because it will be your choice at that point whether to come back in the body or not. The problem here is that we're not remembering. We don't have that smriti. The cell wall of our jnana matra, as we were talking about so much, has become eroded. So forgetfulness, avidya, lack of knowledge comes in, or ignorance, which is, according to both the father of Vedanta and yoga, the first hell. All other hells come out of that one hell. First hell is forgetfulness of your true nature, avidya. So in order to counteract that, then we strengthen up our cell wall by smriti, by swadhyaya, by remembering. And it's not something you do just at Sunday class. And, not necessarily a conservative person, as some of you know. Neither am I, liberal. I don't know what to describe myself as. I'm rather radical, but I'm very traditional. I'm a radical traditionalist, okay? But what I'm meaning here is that, you should capture Sunday back from your week. In that way, I'm conservative. I'm a Quaker. I'm a Christian. I want you to worship on Sunday. I don't want you to do any work on Sunday whatsoever. You just put the whole day, your mind on God. It was a good rule in the Christian tradition back when I was growing up. We are seeing it disappear even back then. It doesn't mean necessarily going to church, but attending the Sangha, you see. I mean, when he sings, Bhaja Govindam, and so forth, he also sings, Sat Sangatve Nisangatvam, Nisangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatvam Nishchalitatvam, Nishchalitatve Jivan Mukti. Bhaja Govindam. So, along with adore the Lord, one of these beautiful verses, there are some 30 or 31 of these verses to this song that I know of, sings Satsangatve Nisangatvam, from holy company, like this, comes Satsangatvam Nirmohatve, comes detachment. See? And then from that comes freedom from delusion, nirmohatvam. So from the company of the holy comes detachment, knowledge of detachment. How to detach from the unreal things of life, non-essential things that are plaguing you, bothering you, that you're brooding about. And from that then comes freedom from delusion. Oh, all of a sudden I feel free from all these things because I have detachment, see. And from nirmohatvam comes nishchalitatvam, resolution. I am now resolved to live in my true nature and never abandon it evermore. That's my bottom line now. Nishchalitatve. I must be absolutely resolved in my dedication to the spiritual path, to the teacher, to the teachings, and to my own enlightenment, because that's what it's all about. I didn't give you the third great source because I jumped to another teaching, but Guru Anushasana, your teacher, Vidya Shastras, the teachings, and Aparokshanubhuti, one of the students says. That is direct experience of your true nature. So those three great sources are a teaching themselves, another Triputi, right? Like AUM. Basically, those three things you hold sacrosanct. If you don't know any other teaching, if you don't leave here today knowing any other teaching, remembering any other teaching than that, your cell wall will be fine. It will shore you up to know that Guru, scriptures, and your own direct experience are all you need in life. You don't need to know a lot of Sanskrit words or rituals or whatever. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you can kill yourself with a little penknife, right? But can you kill someone else with that? You're going to need a spear, a sword, a shield, a dagger, bow and arrow, whatever. You're going to need all these weapons. Arm yourself to, because this other person may not want to be killed. Well, he means basically that the Guru needs to know all these things. He needs to arm himself with everything possible so he can kill your ego for you, because you're not doing a very good job of it. You're not keeping the ego in abeyance. So the teacher has to arm himself with every philosophy, every darshana, every teaching possible to try and convince you about getting your foot set on the path in this lifetime and never wavering ever again. Because peace and contentment, freedom, all those things are yours if you just stay on the path. The dharmic path, that's all. You get so many allurements and so many distractions wanting to get off the straight and narrow. It just leads to suffering. A little pleasure for a while, then suffering. Always has, always will. So that's why I was saying the teacher brings your mind back to the Jnana Yoga teachings. You want to go toward Hatha, he brings you back to Jnana. You want to go towards ritual, he brings you back to Jnana. You want to go to too much meditation, he brings you back to Jnana, so that your meditations will be fueled, so your asana will have somewhere to go, and so your devotions will be fulfilled. Of all the purifiers in this world, there is no greater one than knowledge, Krishna says. You might as well be the king of love. And he's talking about wisdom and its import. So Guru Bhakti, very precious, you see. For instance, we were talking about singing these songs by Shankara and talking about some of the teachings that are possible. We looked at this Guru Anusashana in terms of getting yourself a good teacher. So Shankara gave this teaching of the 4 qualifications of a teacher. You know, if you go to different sanghas and so forth, they're always saying, are you qualified? Are you qualified to be here? Can you be a Sufi? Can you be a Buddhist? Can you be a Vedantist? Qualify yourself. So important. Probably nothing more important than that for entering, according to Vivekananda's teachings too. But then there's very little ever said about the qualifications of a guru, so here's where some problems come in. You must have noticed by our past history in America. As far as Vivekananda was concerned, the people who met him said, well, you don't need any credentials, Swamiji. The sun doesn't ask to shine. You're obviously the authentic guru. And it's because he learned from an authentic guru. You know the song. Shri Ramakrishna, Paramaguru, Shri Ramakrishna, Laho Pranam, Namaskar, and so forth. So, Paramahamsa Shri Ramakrishna, Matri Bhakta Yuga Avatar. Matri Bhakta, you are the devotee, Bhakta, of the Divine Mother, Matri, of the Matra. So Matra means divine particle, wisdom particle, and it traces back to who? The very mother of wisdom. Vani Saraswati Vagdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi Veena Pani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Pralayana Vani Saraswati Vagdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi. Matri Bhakta, you are the devotee of the Divine Mother. Who's the Divine Mother? Saraswati, the goddess of the word, the Vakdevi. What word does she hold? Om. What does the word contain? Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trinity. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, the three states of your consciousness. And so forth and so on. That's how deep it goes. And it keeps going deeper and deeper. It's fathomless. You can't find the depths of it. Boundless wisdom. So the mind, we bring your mind back to it. So the Guru has a responsibility to teach you the Advaita, non-dualism, first. All other teachings can come after that. So to teach the non-duality first, and then to let people cogitate on it for a while. You see, that's what's important. A while may mean a lifetime, but it would be better if it were 6 months or a year. As even Vivekananda said, you should be able to become a fairly attained yogi within 6 months. He said that at the beginning of his book on Raja Yoga, the meditation yoga. Means you should have that good a memory that you will recall as soon as the teacher starts speaking, all this wisdom is within me. He's not saying anything new. I know all this. Of course, you don't walk up to the Guru and say, I know. See? You approach the Guru with humility because there are certain things that are deep, deep, deep. Dupa, dupa, dupa. Dive deep into the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. So wisdom leads to love. You can't know what pure love and true love is until you have destroyed ignorance with this wisdom. This wisdom is also a path on its own. Because Shankara is singing Bhaja Govindam, adore the Lord, but in one of the verses he's saying Sat Sangatve Nirmohatvam, and so forth. Destroy that moha, delusion, with holy company. And then get some detachment around your life in this world and your problems. And then get some resolve about the path. Of all the 31 verses, I think that's my favorite. And it ends with Nishchalitatva Jivan Mukti. Jivan Mukti. You must be a jiva, embodied being who is mukta, who has mukti, liberation, in this very life. So that kind of resolve is what you need. Not just a resolve to be just a good person, because where there's good, there's bad. Not just resolve to be virtuous, because where there's virtue, then vice is right nearby. Non-duality means transcending dualities. There's a gold chain and there's an iron chain, but they both bind. So you must be beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all other pairs of opposites. So this wisdom is the great purifier. So the teacher who comes to you ought to have these 4 qualifications. If you knew about these as a Westerner early on, then you probably wouldn't have accepted most of the top 10 gurus on the circuit right now, with their hundreds and thousands of followers, who later on betrayed you for a suitcase full of money in an airplane, or something of that ilk. What you want is a guru who is pure and stainless and sinless, avrijjana. That's one of those qualifications you see here. Right there, leads a pure and simple life. You also want a teacher who is a kamahata. Doesn't want, kama means desire, as most of you know. That probably is one of the few Sanskrit words that Westerners know, kama, desire. And if they think of a scripture, they think, oh, Kama Sutra. Let's go for all the sexual teachings. But akama, no desire. How about that? That's non-dual teaching. It's beyond desire and its fulfillment, or lack of it being fulfilled. So, it's because if you can't fulfill desire, it turns into the 7-fold road to ruin. You get angry, you get frustrated, you get lost, and then you can't find your way home. So, a kamahata means that teacher should be free of desire, except that he wants you to have enlightenment. That's the one desire that is legitimate there. You must get enlightened. Because if misery loves company, so does bliss. So, why am I teaching you all this? To show I'm a great teacher? or to gather a huge flock of 100,000 disciples? No, so that you can join the company of the holy and be free of suffering and enjoy your divine heritage, which is pure knowledge, pure wisdom, pure devotion, and pure bliss, unalloyed bliss. That's your true nature. That's where that divine memory comes from. They always say, oh, I had a memory of being born. Remember when I was in my mother's womb? Big deal. Can you remember before that? Before you were in your mother's womb? Because if you can remember that, then you're seeing the witness of your birth. Not the body, not the birth, but the consciousness upon which all of it was laid, like a dream, like a rainbow sheen. Shankara said, you have a plate of glass and you turn it towards the sun, and then there's this rainbow sheen that comes across it, and you just turn it another inch away and it's gone. That's like the worlds of name and form and time and space. There and gone. Do you mean actually, Babaji? I mean, they're gone in your deep sleep state and they're there when you wake up. So it must be your consciousness that has something to do with them being there or not, isn't it? And consciousness is vast and limitless, and until you know your consciousness, you're not going to know that superlative fact, and until you get ignorance removed with wisdom, you're not going to know your consciousness. Dancing and singing, asanas and pranayams. I was reading yesterday, 100,000 asanas and pranayams will never awaken you to your true nature. This atmagyan is what you need. Atmagyan. Atmagyana dinena tasmai Sri Gurave namaha. And the Guru is that who transfers that wisdom to me. So he does it because he's free of desire. Not only for himself, because he's already got everything he or she wants. He wants you to be free of desires. And he wants you to have only the desire for liberation, to become a jivan mukti. Now, also, right in line with the teachings of the Jnanamatra Shrotriya. See? Shrotriya wants you to know the essence of the scriptures, just like he does. When I went looking for my teacher, that was the one thing that set him apart from all other teachers I'd found. He knew the essence of the scriptures by heart, and he could transmit them to me. He wasn't a pundit or a priest. He was a Swami, and could recite the whole Bhagavad Gita in his 90s by heart. So he knew the essence of the scriptures. They were ingrained in him, probably for many lifetimes. And then he could speak to you and impress you with them, impress your mind with them. I'm not talking about impress like, oh wow. I'm talking about impress like indent, like insert, transmit. And then you were impressed by that. You went away impressed. I want to go back there. There was one teaching, Sri Ramakrishna said, the farmer had a little pain in his body. So he took a little tiny bit of opium every day that the doctor gave him, in a pill. So once he was out in the farmyard there, pouring the pill out, one pill got away. He didn't see it. And the peacock saw it. So when the farmer walked away, the peacock went and ate that little pill of opium and got blissful. The next day at the same time, he was right in that spot again, waiting for his next dose. So that's what the ardent aspirant or student is like. They get a little dose of that wisdom, the next week at the same time they'll come back. Because there's something about that wisdom that's superlative, that is all attracting. Why else would it put you to sleep? If you fall asleep in my class, it's a very beautiful sleep. So you're getting everything vicariously because the teacher can transmit it to you, whether you're awake or asleep. There was another story in that regard. Sri Ramakrishna used to go to this house in Calcutta, visit the house of the devotees. This is in the 1800s. So he'd take a carriage for hire and go there, get out, alight, walk into the house, and everyone was there. The devotees were there waiting for a visit from the Paramahamsa. and to hear these great teachings and singing, songs that would go on. So there was one very elderly man that always greeted the master at that house. He said, oh, bowed, touched his feet, and was so devoted. He had Guru Bhakti. Then he would sat down and wait. Sri Ramakrishna would go in the house, and he would sit there on the porch waiting for it to begin. But then he'd fall asleep, and he would not wake up until Sri Ramakrishna was leaving. And he did this time and time and time again, week after week. So finally he complained to the master. And the master said, don't worry, you're getting it vicariously. You're here. You're getting this in your sleep. So I hope you don't use this for an excuse to not come to class and to stay in bed or to fall asleep in the class, because, of course, there are much higher states of awareness than that, like all the people that were in the house actually wide awake listening to the master teach. But nevertheless, it's that transmission that's important. So when you talk about the 4 qualities of an authentic spiritual teacher, you're going to have to say, has no desire except that you get enlightenment, lives a pure, unostentatious lifestyle, free of lots of overlays, and can transmit the essence of the teachings to you. And finally, is a knower of Brahman. You have to be sure that that being is a knower of Brahman. And if that's true, you can bow and touch the feet of that person like I did my Swami when I met him. I had no qualms about touching my Guru's feet. And because those 4 qualifications were there, then that was all the proof that was needed, if there was any needed at all. So you can see here that that leads to Brahmavit. That is Brahmavittam. And there are 4 levels of knower of Brahman. Brahmavit, Brahmavidvara, Brahmavidvaraya, and Brahmavidvarishta. And that brings in a teaching called the 7 stages of knowledge, which I'm not going to take you into today, but very much a part of the Jnanamatra, isn't it? We're talking about stages of knowledge, all congealed inside of the memory, inside of the deeper memory, causal memory, inside of the intelligent particle, inside of an ocean of intelligent particles. You can just see it if you look inward instead of outward. But you could see it if you look outward too. All of this is made of intelligent particles. The tree swaying in the wind, the sky behind it, the backdrop, the fog blowing by, the ocean forming waves outside our ashram window, all made of intelligent particles, but it's going to be harder to see it in the gross. Where you want to see it is essentially where its origin is, which is why we want you to study your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state of consciousness. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep state of consciousness. Because there's where you'll find the origins to things. Who would have thunk, as the saying goes, right? That all of that exists back inside of me. But what was Christ trying to say if he was saying the kingdoms of heaven are within you? Or what was Patanjali trying to say if he was saying all knowledge lies within you? He's just putting it in one sentence for you so that you can begin this inner journey. And it's an inner journey that doesn't begin with a physical step. So all journey begins with the first step. This step begins with sitting in asana and becoming still. Because you're following a projection process back to its origin. You're following a series of your own lifetimes that you've taken from that original lifetime where you separated yourself out from the mass of consciousness, where you became a spark off the fire. And you believed yourself to be a spark and not the fire. You believed yourself to be a hailstone and not the ocean. You solidified a separate complex called the ego. And that act of separation is the first movement, although it's a very causal, very subtle movement of the soul's individuation process. People ask, why did I come into the body? It's really, you have to point the finger towards you. You say, when you're doing japa, see, and your beads, you're holding your beads in your hand, your finger's pointing to your heart. See? The word is in me. The teachings are in me. I'm even pointing at myself. So if I'm doing japa with eyes wide open looking outwardly, then I'm ignoring all the signs. I'm ignoring all the signs. So the teacher comes and makes you aware of those signs. That's one of these great facets of devotion, the bhakti path. And it's very much in line with Parvid, the supreme knowledge. Now, we looked at that Guru Bhakti in that regard. Let's all look at it through a teaching I gave at Satsang last Tuesday, which was also live streamed, about Shuddhi, the word Shuddhi. There are three kinds of this wisdom. In terms of bhakti, that is. Now, basically, they're called Chit Shuddhi, Kriya Shuddhi, and Drovya Shuddhi. Mentioned them again Tuesday night at the Satsang, which was live streamed. Three modes of purity. Shuddhi really means purity. So, very much a kind of bhakti path when you feel like you want to purify the heart, purify the senses, purify the mind. And then through this purity, you can effect a kind of self-surrender to your ishtam, to your guru, to your path, and to your ideal. Then they talk about these three levels of Shuddhi. If we start with the lower one first on this chart here, Drovya Shuddhi, you see that it connects up very much with Vaidya or Vaidhi Bhakti, ritualism. So most people start out into the Bhakti path doing some sort of ritual. They'll set up a shrine or they'll go to a church and bow at the shrine. And then they're pretty much trying to create an atmosphere that is sacred. And so that when they come into that atmosphere, they feel some devotion to God beginning to rise up in their heart and in their mind. You can see there that it's been connected to purity of location or purity of atmosphere. It can also be said purity of articles. You can see the backdrop of this shrine, the shrine in the backdrop here with the various articles like water pot, chamara, that is a fan to fan the images, incense, flowers, sacred water, and so forth, and images of your guru and of your ishtams. So people in the West are very interested in that, to become involved in their own bhakti practice. Usually you saw it in a church if you were Catholic, if you were raised, but you really couldn't participate very much. It was all officiated by the priest. Same pretty much in India, the priests officiate, but it's more of a hands-on affair there. You can and should take it home, create your own version of it externally, and then bow and worship and meditate right there in that atmosphere. So it's purity of location, purity of atmosphere. It's a great teaching. I must say that a teaching that goes hand in hand with that is purity of food, because food is a very important element in our tradition, Vedic tradition, Tantric tradition, and Yogic tradition. And as we've been saying, it's not just purity of food physically, but it's how the food can be blessed and offered to the ishtam first, so that the ishtam can touch it with the vibration, and then you can eat it. You can make sure that it's pure, not just externally, but on those other two levels, internally and causally. So again, you have three levels of food there: the outer, the inner, and the transcendent nature of food. And when you get to the transcendent nature of food, you'll understand that wisdom is a kind of nourishment, won't you? Doesn't that make sense? So actually, what I just said a few minutes ago, isn't it true that everything's made of intelligent particles? So you take a bit of food, a papaya or a pineapple, personal-sized pineapple, let's see, and there you look at it. Aren't you really looking at a manifestation of your own mind, congealing of intelligent particles into an object? Aren't you doing that? Well, if you don't know or you can't quite understand that, then practice some external ritual, because then that will take you from the outer nature of food, you're offering it, to the inner nature of food where it gets blessed, and then the taking of it where it gives you mukhya prana, healthy energy prana, and that prana is used for bringing the energy up the subtle spine and turning it into light, intelligence. So the intelligence that is within you is now getting expressed or manifested. That's what the gurus are doing, actually. It's why Jesus had a halo and Buddha's Noble Eight said they saw a great light coming off him, is because of refined food. And the food jumping levels with the prana to such a state where it was actually an emanation out of the pores. Ojas, we call it. Spiritual orange juice, I say. Ojas. You've been drinking this nectar. You've been working and brewing this nectar and refining it till finally it comes out as the teachings. And you're eating the teachings. So you're having a repast when you come to class. You say, oh, I have to go to a Jnana Yoga class and listen to Babaji talk for 3 hours again. But you say, oh, there's a feast going on today. Sri Ramakrishna used to call it a mart of joy. There's a mart of joy going on. And we must be present for it as often as we can if we want to be nourished. And especially if our cell wall is a little bit deteriorated and we forget day to day, week to week, month to month, or lifetime to lifetime, if we're born in ignorance, then we must not have exposed ourselves enough to that feast of wisdom. And our ignorance must have come back on us. See, it wasn't destroyed at the root. It came back on us. Like habits and desires do. You can quit drinking and go to AA and so forth, but 10 years later you think, oh, I'm free, I'm safe. And you go to a party and you just take one drink and that's it. You start all over again because the desire in the back of your mind was not destroyed. If it had been destroyed, you would have never touched the stuff ever again. You wouldn't have gone anywhere that was being served. So that's really a level that happens at that level of outer purity, because once you have inner purity, which is the next step, you can go where it's served and you're not interested in it. So it's not a moralistic teaching alone. It's only moralistic at the level that your habit or your obsession is operative. And then you have to observe certain morals and ethics around it. But when you come to a level where you absolutely are free of that kind of lower level, then you can go on to what's called Kriya Shuddhi. See, or we could associate that with Raga Bhakti, a kind of bhakti that is inside now. Somebody asked me recently, are you excited? You're live streaming today. I said, oh, I try and curb excitement, because that kind of gets you off center. Better, to stay cool, calm, and collected. And because the transmission of the teaching is what's happening, and I don't want to interfere with that. See, the less I interfere with it, the more Mother Saraswati, as I just sang about, can come to the fore and teach you. See, and I'm just her student too. See? I'm just her child, which was really Sri Ramakrishna's secret. It's a great secret of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. It's that he was totally given, not just 100%, but 120% towards Divine Mother. So he was a person that had Prema Bhakti, but let's not jump there too quick. Let's take the teaching here at the level of Kriya Shuddhi. Once you've purified atmosphere, and you've purified location, and you've purified food and action that goes on in that area, then you go to this level of purity of act and deed. Basically, you're wondering why your acts and deeds are either impotent or they don't have enough power to carry over. So they're not making a big enough effect in your life, or they're actually backfiring on you with negative ramifications. Every deed you do has some sort of negative karma attached to it. Well, then basically probably go back to your Dravya Shuddhi, make sure that you understand outer worship of things. It's called, in my tradition, deification. That is, in Tantra, it's the deification of things. So renunciation is not condemnation. Renunciation is deification. To renounce a thing is to know it. Because when you know it, you don't want it anymore. Why? Because you know it's already yours. I can't put it any simpler than that. The chair is yours, the house is yours. It doesn't matter whether your name's on a deed for it. It all came out of you. And there's no broker in those inner realms. See, the moneylenders are at the temple doors out here. So make sure your temple is free of them. See, and in your house you can do that. Sometimes even in the church you can't do that because it's called conventional religion. See, and it's been in bed with politics from year one. So it's not pure. It's at best mixed, Shuddha, Ashuddha, mixed impure and pure, all together in some amalgam. That's the hardest to get over. If it's absolutely impure, most people have the sense to say, okay, I give that up, you know. And if it's pure, most people say, that's unique. I wish I had that. But if it's mixed, pure and impure, it's accompanied by all sorts of confusion. You don't know what's right, what's wrong, in any given moment, or any given time, in any given act. A good act can then lead to a bad result, and you get confused. Or a bad act can then lead to a good result temporarily, and you get confused. So whether it's the location, the atmosphere, the food, or your act, you want to make sure that that absolute purity is your bottom line, your default zone, your line of demarcation between what you will accept and what you will absolutely reject. So the wisdom that comes about for this, as I just said, is connecting it into yourself. That all things have come out of you, all in the states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, are just telling you that again every 24 hours. You know what life really is, day-to-day life? It's something we set up for ourselves so that we remind ourselves of this every 24 hours. It's like life is an alarm clock, a 24-hour alarm clock that has 3 phases. And every 8 hours it'll go off, telling you, did you master your waking state? Did you master your deep sleep state? Did you master your dream state? I was just working on a new chart, and some of you may see it if you're around for it, called the curtain of nescience / the cloud of unknowing. That curtain of nescience in deep sleep falls, and you can't see your true nature. That's why you feel so beautiful in deep sleep. That is, no form, no name, no worries, no stress, no children, no money, no cell phone, no live streaming. All of that has gone away. You see, it's now just a stream of consciousness, an eternal live streaming. And so every 8 hours you're being reminded of that, again and again. That's what life is. And so you can see why beings like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, a man is born to no purpose if, having been given the boon of a human body, he's unable to realize God in this lifetime. In other words, life equals your opportunity to realize your true nature. A true nature that you always are, no doubt, but don't let the pseudo-Advaitists trick you, see, into saying you're already perfect, you don't need to do any practice. That's an unwise advice. Then you're not looking at a guru with 4 qualifications, are you? You're looking at someone who really doesn't have your best at heart. Maybe they're channeling some from somewhere. See? And you have to tell them, give it up and be yourself. There are no channels in deep sleep. If I study my waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states, then I'll know the A, U, and M of Om. And all that's left is that little Turiya, that one-eyed smile up there, completely detached from the other 3 states of consciousness. When you make an Om sign out of dominoes and knock it down, as our kids do at class, the Svara remains standing. So that's you, that's the witness, that's the ultimate. Can never be touched, can never be defiled by the tongue of man, as Sri Ramakrishna said. Thank God there's one thing that can't. And thank God further that it is really the only thing that is true. It is the one reality, and that's where we come back to Advaita. Don't think that teaching bhakti at 3 levels is not Advaita. Then you're guilty of causing separations that don't exist. The 4 yogas aren't airtight separate compartments. Action, devotion, wisdom, and meditation. Those are to be connected. Don't they sound like the A, U, M, and the Turiya? So all 4 of these yogas exist in us, but one of them is more predominant in each of us. Some of us are more active, so if you're a more active temperament and you're not practicing karma yoga, then you're missing your opportunity to be a master at that which you're best at. What can I say? It's very painful to see that happening to people. And if you're a bhakta and you really are doing the bhakti path right, then bless your food, offer it to the deity, fan the deity, sing songs to the deity, because the deity is within you. Really, the deity is saying there, thanks for all that, but have you really awakened to the fact that I am in you? Because then Dravya Shuddhi will turn into Kriya Shuddhi, and Kriya Shuddhi will turn into Chit Shuddhi, pure mind. And none of this will be necessary as a practice anymore. You'll realize it's all within you, so every time you eat an apple, you're not thinking, oh, this is the cause of original sin. This is the intelligent particle, just a manifestation of my own knowledge. And I don't even have to say, God bless it. It's just a part of my own mental process. I don't have to thank God for food. Really, if I were to trace origins, I'd have to thank nature for food, wouldn't I? But nature's insentient. There's no God in nature. That God is sentient, that's in you, and nature's come out of that sentient. So since it's come out of the sentient, it too must be sentient in its own way. That is, Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. From the infinite, the finite has come, yet being infinite, only infinite remains. Because even the finite is infinite. You can't find an end to it. Thank you very much for that. So you see Kriya Shuddhi, and then you see above it Chit Shuddhi, purity of mind. In this chart, so that we're more pure, let's go back to Dravya Shuddhi and see some of these points, these bullet points. Perform the puja and perform arati. Chant the names of the Lord and receive a mantra diksha. Receive a mantra from a teacher. Those are all very important parts of the level of Vaidhi Bhakti. Every beginning aspirant starts off that way. In almost every religion, these are present in their own way of saying. If you're a Buddhist, they'll take hand with the Buddha. It's like getting a mantra in our tradition, and you probably, in most Buddhist paths, you will get a mantra too. Take refuge in the Buddha, I mean. In Sufism, you would take hand. Now, look at the bullet points under Kriya Shuddhi, purity of act. You must offer the prayers and do dhanam, charity. The householder purifies his or her money by offering it to spiritual purposes. You know the teaching of Sri Ramakrishna about that. Basically, money gets taken by the money of rich people gets taken by 3 or 4 different elements. One is doctors, because of ill health. It's because they're not eating properly or doing their exercises. And then lawyers, because of court litigations, because they always want the money of others, or other people want their monies. And evil children. I was just reading about that today in one of the scriptures. It actually mentions that the greatest fear of a rich man is his son, because his son wants his money. And his son could do anything to get it. You never know. So this has been noted even in scriptures, these practical matters. So offer prayer and charity, dhanam we call it in the tradition, to the highest spiritual purposes. That's how to purify money. Also observe austerities. If your body is acting and so forth, the best austerity is what? Fasting? No. The best austerity is doing your puja. Use your body to bow before the altar. Use your body to pick flowers for the Lord. Use your body to burn incense in front of the image. That's an austerity of your body. That's the best austerity of the body. Who said that? Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. About fasting, what did Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita say?
Too much or too little is not a good thing.
Too much or too little is not a good thing. Yoga is not for one who feasts too much or who fasts too much. So here's the middle path for you. These are teachers of the middle path. Sri Krishna, Holy Mother, my teacher's teacher was a middle path teacher. The Buddha had many middle path teachings, some Buddhist schools. So observe austerities. There are higher austerities and there are lower austerities, and you should probably inform yourself of those higher ones. Like study of scriptures, or like coming to hear one of these classes. That's an austerity. If you're sitting like her, cross-legged, and there for the whole thing and wide awake, that's a good thing. Or at least have a straight spine wherever you're sitting. See? And then you're there for the duration. Then you're doing a 3-hour austerity, and it's going to mean something to you. It's purifying this, and we're getting there, don't worry. Chit Shuddhi means increasing devotion to God. You often come to a level of consciousness where your karmas are neutralized and you feel subtle bliss, and you think, where did my ignorance go? Day after day goes by, I don't feel the return of my fears. I don't feel the return of my brooding. I don't feel the return of pains and sufferings. What happened? Am I enlightened? So you go and you ask your teacher, what should I do now? Well, now just increase your devotion to God. And that's the instruction you get if you've reached a sattvic level. Sattva means balance. It's not enlightenment yet, necessarily, but it's a precursor to enlightenment. You're not falling into rajas anymore, that's restlessness, and you're not falling into tamas anymore, that's slothfulness. So there's your default zone. See? You won't fall into those anymore, you're just going to stay in balance all the time. So from sattva, that's a springboard. If you can remain equanimous, upekshanam is the Sanskrit word, in equanimity all the time, then it's just a matter of time before enlightenment will dawn on you. You don't even have to look for it or force the issue. You just stay in balance all the time. Which is back to our song, right? Bhaja Govindam, and so forth. Sat Sangatve, Nisangatvam. Make sure that you have holy company and that you get detachment. So here's vairagya, detachment, the import of it. You'll never get balance and peace in sattva until you have detachment from things that are bothering you. Duh. Or the word nowadays is do. So get detachment from those things that are bothering you. The curtain of nescience is made up of fear, is made up of doubt, and is made up of mula vidya, root ignorance. And what keeps it thick is brooding. That's the teaching on the curtain of nescience, the cloud of unknowing. What you encounter in deep sleep, which keeps you from remembering the bliss you experienced there when you wake up. You can even wake up cranky because after you came out of deep sleep, you went through a series of dreams, and those dreams got grosser and grosser and grosser, leading right up to the moment when you woke up. So the last thing you remember are the 1,000 imbecilities of the mind. Hopefully your teacher taught you, if he was qualified, as we were talking about, that you're not the mind. You're not the body, you're not its diseases. So if you're not the mind, you're not its brooding and its problems. So develop witness consciousness and transcend the mind. Every good luminary did that. Buddha under the bo tree, Christ in the wilderness, Moses on the mountain. They all developed transcendent quality. And so even your food has transcendent quality in it when you eat it now. Because the minute you look at it, you purify it. Because you know what it is. What did I just say? To know an object is to get over fearing it. If you don't know the object, say water, earth, fire, air, ether, or the senses that behold the objects, if you don't know them, then you always live in some sort of fear of them. Therefore, renunciation is fearless. To give it up completely is the best way, but you usually can't jump to that highest step. So you do it in stages. If you're a bhakta, even if you're a jnani, I think these stages become very important. I mean, look about the teaching of food here, how they put it together. Ingested food, the coarse ingested food turns to feces. You might have noticed. Ingested food that's of a middling nature turns to flesh. Ingested food that's of a subtle nature turns to mind. You ever heard it expressed that way before in your biology class or your nutrition class in the West? Let's look at the next. Ingested water Coarse turns to urine. Middling turns to blood. Ingested water that's subtle turns to your breath. Vapor, air, breathing, moisture. Moisture in, moisture out. How about energy from food? Coarse energy from food turns to bone. Middling energy from food turns to marrow. Subtle energy from food turns to speech. And speech is an intelligent matter, we hope. We hope you can hold an intelligent conversation. And eventually from intelligent conversation, hopefully you can go to an Atma Vichara type of conversation with your guru and with your Sangha members. The minute class gets out, you go talk somewhere about work or something, well, you get together with your Sangha and say, those teachings were very amazing. I particularly like that one that yada yada yada. I know you're launched in on a conversation and getting over this little line of zeros that when you add them all up, adds up to zero. You're putting a 1 in front of the zeros so that it all adds up to a huge amount of substance in you. And you're sharing it with others. So that energy from food and energy from water and from ingested food, it's a unique teaching that I put in tandem with this particular teaching on this chart. Let's go back up to the top and take this final bullet points. Not only do you increase devotion to God, but you study the non-dual scriptures. And that's a part of that Chit Shuddhi, purified mind principle. It's going to lead you to Prema Bhakti. Wonderful that Prema Bhakti will meet with Brahmagyan, see, as we've said. I was saying that last week at class, I think. The highest love is the highest wisdom. They're one and the same. It's just on the way up in the triangle, you're seeing them manifest in different ways along the trajectory of your path. And if you're an integral yogi, or a synthesizer of yoga, or a Purna yogi, then you're interested in all 4 yogas, which Vivekananda said is the disciple of the future. That's what he would like to see. The disciple of the future is one who integrates all 4 yogas, not one who just practices one and gets good at one, and then it's just one-sided. You have one-sided people like that, but he's also met one-sided spiritual aspirants, and one-sided teachers too, who are very good at one thing, don't know anything else. Sri Ramakrishna had rather a humorous way of saying that. He said, a general store owner knows a little bit about everything. So it's not necessarily that you're jack of all trades, master of none. You may be a general store owner. You may know just the essence of each of these little things, and you can bring them together in a very powerful statement for yourself before you pass from the body. Hopefully while you're still in the body. A jivan mukta, right? That you're a living, liberated soul, and death doesn't frighten you anymore. So if the curtain of ignorance consists of fear and doubt and ignorance, then make fear afraid of itself. Make doubt doubt itself. And make ignorance ignorant of itself. It doesn't exist anymore. And then put death in its own grave. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Yes. Don't think of it in terms of born free. That's a contradiction in terms. Anyone who's born is not free. You want to be free. It's not a matter of birth and life and death or any process. It's not a matter of movement. It's not a matter of projection. It's not a matter of evolution and involution. It's not a matter of spiritual practice or lack thereof. You are that. It's the cosmic game of tag. You're it. The hand has fallen on your head. And when the teacher does it, it's for all time. That is, you will do those exact things. Make fear afraid of itself and put death in its own grave. And you'll do that with a pure mind, Chit Shuddhi. So, along with study of non-dual scriptures, practice formless meditation. Before then, you are practicing meditation on the Ishtam, you see, on the deity, maybe even the Pratika and the Pratima, as we were discussing about 2 weeks ago. The little stone Buddha or the obelisk or the candle in a windless place. That was your early meditation. But then pretty soon when you had Raga Bhakti, you started worshipping not the deity outside as its manifestation, but the actual representation of that inside. Because we've already found out that everything proceeded from me, so the Ishtama did too. The gods did too, and in fact, God also did proceed through me. Man is just God walking around on two legs, is how Swami Vivekananda put it. And he was amazed that we didn't know that when he arrived in this country in the late 1800s. We hadn't found that out yet. I mean, you have to find it out first before you can test the ground and see if you are God. You'll probably come up short. You'll come up short for a while. But when you get a pure mind, isn't that what he said? Both Lord Buddha and Sri Ramakrishna said, pure mind is Buddha mind. Pure mind is God. So when all the impurities leave the mind, there's nothing left there but God. And now you've found it. You can't say he or she anymore because it's beyond gender. You can't say form or formlessness anymore as you were contemplating it along the way because it's beyond form and formlessness. So the absence of impurities in the mind, that's freedom from ignorance. That's what you want. With a pure mind, there is just pure everything. Pure body, pure senses, pure food, pure worship, pure wisdom. It all turns pure, just like putting alum in a bucket of mixed paints. So you have this, painter, this paintbrush, had this glass of water and he kept dipping it in and it turned so many different paints, it just turned chalky brown or black. And then he just put a drop of alum in there, and it just turned clear immediately within seconds. So that drop of alum to our mind is this non-dual truth. We call it Advaita Vedanta. Now I think we have just enough time to read these quotes. In accordance with Drovya Shuddhi, which you remember is purity of place and location, to quote here is, repeating the name of God a fixed number of times, fasting, making pilgrimages, worship with offerings, doing sacrifices, by continuing on in this path for a time, one gradually attains Raga Bhakti. So, Sri Ramakrishna isn't one that really likes to talk too much about external worship, although he did some of it himself. He's already steering you towards Raga Bhakti, towards a kind of purity that has to do more with your activity, your actions, your karmas. What does he say there then? Vaidhi Bhakti is like moving a fan to create a breeze, but the fan is set aside when the south wind blows by itself. This is like Raga Bhakti, wherein one feels love and attachment to God naturally. Basically, you should have been born with this. Swami Vivekananda said that. I can move amongst all sorts of men and talk with everyone, but I'd rather be a person with a natural love for God. It's just a beautiful thing right away. You just feel a kinship with that soul. You almost don't even have to say anything. You just stand side by side and smile, you see. That's the one-eyed smile. You've reached Turiya with another person. So, moving a fan to create a breeze, that's like outer worship. Very, very apropos analogy, isn't it? But when the south wind blows by itself, that's Raga Bhakti. It's just natural to feel this worship going on, both inside and outside. How about the quote under Chit Shuddhi? Because remember, as we talk about this, we are wrapping up the teaching on Guru Bhakti, which is one of the petals of this beautiful lotus called the Jnanamatra. About Chit Shuddhi, he says, but one cannot realize God without Prema Bhakti. When one has such love, one does not get attracted to the maya of wife, children, relatives, and friends. One retains only compassion for them. That's a nice way to put it. You don't have that egotistic, selfish, personalized, attached kind of relationship with them, which kind of haunts you, doesn't it, in the background of your mind. You're always thinking about their best, but their worst comes forward too. Think about the problems they're having. or you're praying to God to help remove those problems when those very problems are the things that they have to work through. Like Padre Pio once, they said he was developing stigmata and showing signs of the stigmata and so forth, so he was considered a holy man. So one person said to him once, "Will you remove my suffering for me? I know you can do it." And he said, "If you knew the import of your suffering, you would not ask me to remove it." So that means give up this brooding. Part of that, what develops the curtain of nescience, makes it thicker, right? It's the brooding on a thing. If you brood on death, you make death real, but death never was real. It's just a transitional state. And all transitions are actually Maya too. So that's why he says here, when one has such love, one does not get attracted to Maya anymore. Maya is name and form in time and space based on causality. That's all come from karma. And that's all within you too. So with these three quotes, we wind up the teaching on Guru Bhakti, which is one of the facets of this Jnanamatra. And we will go on afterwards to some of the dissolving power and especially the settling wisdom. I want to talk about the settling wisdom of the Jnanamatra after the break. Om Bhadram Karnabhihi Srinuyama Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabirya Jatraha Sthirairangayish Tushtuvam Sastanuvir Vishema Devahitam Yadayuhu. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual, hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting, and may we, while worshipping the Lord and Mother of the universe, with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat.